Hi, everyone. This week we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity in retrospect of um, healthcare. So let's get started. Just a quick kind of overview of a definition for cybersecurity and some information around what we're going to be talking about here. Cybersecurity really focuses on not just the protection of digital assets and digital data, but also the physical protection of those assets, whether that's the servers or the networks or even the human aspect of uh, the transformation and transfer of those digital assets. So my definition for cybersecurity that I've always used is that cybersecurity is protection of digital and physical assets used to deliver the digital information, right? Cybersecurity focuses on major domains of cybersecurity and how those domains impact what's called the CIA triangle, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triangle of data and systems used to deliver this data. Specifically, it's about how do we secure and provide access to appropriate data that is accurate at the time in which it's needed to be accessed to the correct parties that need access to that, right? The growing landscape and footprint of cybersecurity and cybersecurity is continuous. There's some arguments out there that the cybersecurity footprint is somewhat stagnant, that there's not uh, continuous evolving rotations in cybersecurity, uh, that all the attack vectors have been kind of defined, and as long as you secure those attack vectors, you're doing the needful in cybersecurity. Um, the part that doesn't really kind of make sense with that argument is that there are continuously new ways to attack those same vectors and bypass the security implementations that we currently have in place. So the landscape and footprint needed for cybersecurity is continuously evolving. There are many frameworks that exist out in the cybersecurity landscape. Each framework provides a unique view of the legal, ethical, and governmental requirements around that particular framework's view on cybersecurity. So the framework could be a view on how cybersecurity relates to a specific industry, or it could be a larger view on how to predict or isolate cybersecurity incidents. So let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity in healthcare. The healthcare industry is a huge target for cybersecurity, as we have learned in the past with the ransomware attacks in the UK and Europe, and even some of the attacks in the United States for healthcare industries. There's a huge asset of personally identifiable information inside of healthcare information systems. Um, the ability to access those patient records and patient data is vast, simply because there's a lot of moving parts to a healthcare information system. It's kind of like a point of sale system, but it's a point of care system, right? So you have cybersecurity impacts at all levels, from the human domain all the way through the initial point of contact, the point of interaction, the reviewing of records, the storing of records, data in process, data in transit, data at rest, um, and sharing that data securely amongst providers that may not be in the same healthcare system, and providing that information back out to the patients and providers, anonymizing data for healthcare research, and those kinds of things are also major concerns when we talk about cybersecurity in healthcare. Um, some of the other aspects that we want to consider with cybersecurity in healthcare are the digital footprint in the operating arenas of healthcare, right? Things like the Da Vinci machines and laparoscopic surgeries require very heavily on digital assets and digital information, and the compromise of that system could be life-threatening. So, healthcare is a huge open market for cybersecurity. There are some processes in place and some industries out there that specifically focus on healthcare, but it is a evolving market. Some of the organizational impacts, and we kind of reached a little bit into this in the last slide about things like the Da Vinci machines, but many impacts on cybersecurity are universal. However, the risk for healthcare personally identifiable information is higher than most other cases, right? Um, when you access a patient's digital healthcare record, you are accessing information about their socioeconomic status, their financial status. You're also accessing sensitive information about their health status, whether that's their physical health or their mental health status. There are key identifiers across the board in these healthcare records, outside of things like you would expect, like social security numbers. But there are also other key identifiers for information for biometrics and geometrics. Um, so the impact of personal identifiable information in healthcare is huge. The social and economic aspects of a breach of information for patients and providers is huge in healthcare, simply because if a breach is to happen, uh, the amount of personal identifiable information that can be displayed or presented is huge, and it can have ramifications on existing coverage. It could have ramifications on future coverage. It could have ramifications on employment and the ability to acquire certain licenses and livelihood for patients and practitioners. Um, so there's a huge impact there. The legal and social impact of a breach obviously have long-lasting effects in the wider community, especially for the professionals, in the trust relationship that those organizations and those professionals are building with their patients, right? Data breaches in healthcare can cause significant trust issues with the patients and providers, which can impact the patient's abilities or willingness to seek treatment for medical conditions, and obviously that's not a good thing. So some current developments that I want to speak at for just a minute here, with the spread of communicable diseases and COVID-19, the cybersecurity healthcare crisis has kind of increased um, because there's a rapid growth in these mobile first applications, low code, no code solutions um, that are trying to meet the demand of being able to predict and isolate and coordinate care across um, different geos to kind of combat the spread of these communicable diseases such as COVID-19. And obviously there's a major threat that's not in the too distant past and is starting to show itself again with ransomware attacks and denial of service attacks on major healthcare infrastructures, especially on nation states where um, healthcare is part of the national infrastructure. Some pros and cons about cybersecurity in healthcare. Um, some of the pros for cybersecurity is that with appropriate cybersecurity, we're able to have faster and more accurate diagnostics because the data and the information needed for diagnosis is available and is accurate and shared appropriately. There are more complete understandings of the pathological developments of diseases and its progression. Um, and big data analytics for developing future medicines and prescriptions and disease tracking are all things that happen once you have a secure, reliable healthcare system. And cybersecurity is a huge, huge part of this. Some of the cons, if you don't implement cybersecurity correctly around healthcare, is a higher risk of continuous care to patients when systems fail. Capital investment into the healthcare systems, especially in the security systems, and securing all those different endpoints and assets can be high. And data dependencies can cause massive delays in critical care if the data is not available at the time of service and of need. Some future research for cybersecurity in healthcare. There are a lot of devices in healthcare that are Internet of Things kinds of devices. There are a lot of mobile devices in healthcare. So there's an opportunity here for some research into how we secure the Internet of Things for healthcare. There's some research for ethical guidelines for healthcare with biometric data and biogeographic, or not biogeographic, but biogeometric data. Network topography for securing mobile devices, the impact of the World Health Organization standards on data security, right? Just like the credit card industry has its own regulations, the World Healthcare Organizations have their own regulations on data security. A lot of financial aid for developing countries and developing healthcare organizations have their own set of data security standards, and how that impacts cybersecurity could be another area of research. Cloud computing and data privacy on the international stage is another area of future research. So I hope that this gives you kind of just a very, very high level overview. And thank you.